We're back once again, only on it's last call. Last call without the alcohol, only on the lastcallpodcast.com. And I'm blessed to have on the show making his debut. Well, we need somebody from a Giants camp because everybody is happy. Things are looking up in New York. There is a new leader in Gotham, and this man here is going to break it down for us. I give you Giants insider, podcaster, and all around, soothsayer and trash talker. I give you it's Monty of Monte Cristo here of the Giants podcast. Might as well start off here. John Harbaugh. Why is he the right fit in your opinion? Like I've heard everybody say this is a home run hire, it's an A hire. Why? What makes him a fit for the Giants?
Hey Chris, thanks for having me. And yeah, see, here's the thing is I think what makes John Harbaugh the right hire for the Giants isn't necessarily John Harbaugh, the coach, who I do think is a great coach, and we can get into that. But I think what it is the Giants needed somebody who has the cachet that John Harbaugh has. I mean, you heard Chris Mara talk about it today that what John Harbaugh was given is not something they would have given to every head coach candidate. And this is a team that has struggled with nepotism and then just guys who have been in this front office for way too long, who have too much power, too much say, and just it's a country club in there. And you're giving full control to John Harbaugh, who comes from probably, if not the one of the best run organizations in all of football. To instill his program, the Ravens way, the Harbaugh way, over in New York, and I think that's what makes the hire so special. Is it's not just getting a good coach; it's changing something that I think a lot of us Giants fans really felt like would never be changed. But when they had the opportunity to get the right coach, it seems like they really handed him the keys to the kingdom.
So that's the big question going into this is he wants total control. He wants to only report to the owner. So is he worth it? I mean, they have a GM. We'll get into that later on. I mean, he's always been a coach. So again, what should he do? I mean, what should we expect then with him now basically being the final shot caller? Like outside ownership, he runs everything. So
Mhm.
what are you expecting or what are you hoping?
Yeah, I think you could look to his brother over in with the Chargers. I think it's a similar situation there. He still works with his GM. He's still, there's a lot of people involved. He's not running everything, but he is the final call, and he's helping build and set a program. And I think that's similar what they have over there at Chargers. There's certainly other places, the Chiefs and other organizations that do this, but I think it's a great thing. I think that John Harbaugh has been around the league for a long time. I think he's been a proven talent evaluator, both from like players with scouting and free agency, but also coaches. This is a man who's been phenomenal at building staffs. He's been around phenomenal front office members. So, I think he's a perfect person to be put into a position like this.
You keep mentioning culture builder, presence. How much is that going to change now the Giants locker room? Where like we heard last year of a horror stories of Abdul Carter is late to a meeting, or
Mhm.
player X is spouting off, or it's a little bit of chaos. W- With him now being the guy in charge, with him being basically I don't want to say the face, but sort of the brand of now the Giants. Like, will we see? Is he empowered to maybe trade or cut people who he looks and goes, yeah, you might be talented, but if you're not playing my way, you're out of here.
Yeah, man. I think he has full power to do whatever he wants on this. And I think Giants fans have to get comfortable with the idea that there's some guys they might like who might not be here. We'll see who that is. He's going to get in here. I don't think he's just looking to get rid of people, but he's going to get to know these guys and see if they're a part of the long-term plans. I think we need to get used to, they need to get accountability in this building. It's something that Brian Dable struggled with. Mike Kafka tried to fix when he got in here. But they need to set some form of accountability. They need to get guys who love football in here. That's what John Harbaugh spoke about. And we'll see who falls under that umbrella and who can, rise to the culture. It's not just like what have you been in the past, but what can you be moving forward with the right coaches, I think is the idea of this. So, we'll see. But, I think John Harbaugh is somebody who's been around the block, been around the league long enough as a head coach that, he can see that bullshit. You can call, I'm sorry if I don't know if I can swear, but
No, you can swear away. You've been. I
okay.
heard you were doing wilder stuff at the nightclubs as you were, having parties about Harbaugh, playing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as long as you're not taking off your shirt and showing, your chest, everything's fine on this show.
All right, cool. But yeah, so I think he can call out players' bullshit. He knows how to spot it, and it's not going to fly with him. He doesn't need anybody or anything. He's a successful coach in this league, and he has plenty of connections and plenty of the ability to find new players that he can. If something's not working, he can move on from it.
What's realistic expectations? Because there's people now going, wait a minute, Harbaugh got hired. And we have Jackson Dart. And look at the Patriots. They're one game away from a Super Bowl. Giants Super Bowl 2027. Yeah, baby. I mean, there's people, thinking that. So what's a realistic expectation for next year, considering you still don't know what the hell you have in a lot of positions?
Yeah, it's a weird feeling for me because I've been a pessimist of this organization for a long time where I've been taking the unders on our win totals and I've been right for the most part, but I know it does feel different. I do think that there's a lot of talent on this team. I think the issue with this team is not, difference makers and high end talent. I think that's something the Giants have a lot of because it's hard not to when you're picking as high as the Giants have picked for like the last decade in every draft. You're bound to get a lot of difference makers that way. But the issue is they haven't built a team, and I think that's where John Harbaugh comes in. Is taking that talent and then bringing in the other players, bringing in the culture, finding what works together, get the right coaches, building a team. And we'll see what he does in free agency. We'll see what he does in the draft. We'll see the coaches he brings in here. But I do think the Giants could be competing for a playoff spot next year. I'm not necessarily, calling a Super Bowl or anything like that. But I think this is a team that, for the one time in a long time, I mean, at the exception of me, 2022, I think this is a team that's, going to be placed on that in the hunt graphic, come December.
How big was it for the Giants, as you said, to seed control? Because their history is usually, all right, we'll get the hot coordinator, or we'll get a retread. We'll get somebody within the Giants family. I've heard that a lot. It's got to be part of the family, and he's
Mm-hmm.
none of that. He, as you said, he didn't sign till Saturday because he's still going over like, all right, I want
Yeah.
full control. GM's not gonna. I don't have to report to a GM. I'm only reporting to owners, and that's it. How big is that for Chris Smart to go? All right, I'm getting out of a comfort zone, and I am bring on a guy who I got to give him everything. I got to give him the keys to the kingdom. I can't meddle because if I do, he's gonna leave.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly can't emphasize how big it is. And we'll see how far this goes and what changes are truly going to be made. There's some rumors going around and all that type of stuff. But, he clearly got the control he wanted. And like I said, there's this clearly, if you read some of the reports from like Ian O'Connor, this got a little bit too close for comfort where it seems like this had a chance to fall apart, but it didn't. I got it across. John Harbaugh used his leverage and he got everything he needed. You know, I think it took the perfect mix for this to happen. It's not something I really even could expect to happen to the Giants. I think a lot of losing, a lot of embarrassment led to this. I think the right coach coming on at the right time led to this. I think all of that coming together, led to a change like this. It feels reminiscent of George Young coming to the Giants, back in the day, back in the late 70s, where the Giants were an embarrassment for well over a decade, and there was some fighting between the Mara family, And ultimately the NFL stepped in and they said, hey, like hire this guy, hire George Young. And he came in to run the organization, and the Wellington ceased power and gave power over player personnel and the football operations to George Young. George Young took it and ran with it, and we had a successful team. We've been running off that model for a very long time, and we didn't have a new GM outside of the organization until Joe Shane. I mean, that's for a long time that it took for doing this, and it was the Giants' way. It was the Giants' way. It was the Giants' way. And I think that for the most part, the Giants' way is dead. It's dying. And we're coming into a new way. We're coming into the Harbaugh way, and I think this is a George Young esque hiring for them. I really do. I think this could be something that totally changes it. You look at, we'll see if like a guy like Tim McDonald is a name to watch for. He's the nephew of Susan McDonald, who is the second oldest child of Wellington Mara, only behind John, and he's been involved in football operations, since 2013, and continued to move up the operations despite all our failures. You saw that with Chris Mara, who did end up kind of stepping away. Now he's stepping more in an ownership position opposed to player personnel. But the words of the great George Young said back in the day when Chris Mara was working as a scout for the Giants, and he wanted the promotion. He wanted to get truly into player personnel, and he said, "We cannot have fireproof heads leading player personnel," and something along those lines. And that's exactly what the Giants ended up doing, putting Chris Mara and Tim McDonald in those roles. And here comes John Harbaugh to do what's right for this organization.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate.
Sure.
Should they have gone for somebody different though, like Mike McDaniel? Brilliant offensive mind. If he could get everything out of Tua Tagovailoa that he did,
Mhm.
or Tagovailoa, he can get more out of Jackson Dart. Or hey, Clint Kubiak, look at that guy. Sam Darnold's now a Pro Bowl quarterback because of him. Hey, that's a great guy. Or even, the new flavor of the month, Nathan Shalehason, who
Yeah.
he's the Rams passing game coordinator. Nobody knows who he is, but hey, I mean, was there a thought that they could have gone that route instead of a guy who, again, Harbaugh's more of a culture builder, but he's not known for being an offensive dynamic guy. So could that have been on the table, or would those guys not have had the juice to go? Yeah, we gotta get rid of Joe Sheen.
Yeah. I mean, I think for first of all, I don't think it was really on the table for the Giants. I do think they've really, really valued experience. I want experienced head coach. I mean, no, I think if it wasn't Harbaugh, it was going to be Stefanski. We'll see if they messed out in both those guys where they would have gone from there. But I love Gary Kubiak. We've talked a little about this. I'm a big fan. I really do think he could be the next great offensive mind. I really am high on him. We'll see if he gets a job and how he does, um, but no, I like it's just totally different. You could argue all those guys could be better coaches. The next great coach, we'll see. Maybe they will be, but no, they wouldn't have had the say and to be honest, Joe Shane isn't. I am not a Joe Shane supporter. I wanted Joe Shane to get fired the last 2 years. I still John Harbaugh to bring his own guy, but ultimately I trust him to make his own decision on this. But but he's not the issue here. It goes way above Joe Shane, and it's with that ownership, getting control over all of football operations and being able to change how Giants do things. That I cannot emphasize again how badly this organization needed that. So, you can say that, John Harbaugh's, ceiling is hit where he couldn't get over the top with Lamar. And, we'll see. Maybe it's John Harbaugh thing, maybe it's a Lamar thing, or maybe, we'll learn moving forward. But regardless of that, this team desperately needed a refresh in the organization, and that's what John Harbaugh brings.
So let's go to the embattled GM, or as you call him, public enemy number one, or probably number two outside of McDonald, Joe Shane. So by all accounts, he won't get fired because they don't want to have another search and
Mhm.
then have more interviews. They want to just get everybody up and running. So for now, what is he? Because again, it's Harbaugh calling him a shot. So
Yeah.
you're guessing he has no control. So what does he do? Just get scouting reports, fetch coffee, get Danishes? What is his role now that Harbaugh's the guy who answers to the owner and only the owner?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that they're at least yet aren't sticking Joe Shane in the broom closet and making him get coffee. I don't think we're at that point yet. We'll see. Maybe we'll get to that point and he'll bring in his own GM. I think that's still on the table, but for now, I would look at this as like an Elliott Wolf situation in New England where Mike Vrabel came in there. He's the final shot caller. He brought a guy like Ryan Cowden from our team with him, guy he had a relationship with, and I still expect something like that, bring his own guy, but ultimate Elliot Wolf is the GM. He's doing the scouting. He's helping, coordinate all our scouting efforts. Going to the All Star games, going to the combine. Getting a good read on the trade markets, the free agency market, on the where people are going to draft. All the normal stuff he's been doing, but ultimately he's going to be doing that in the way that John Harbaugh wants it to be done, and in his vision. It's not going to be in the vision of what Joe Shane brought and how he built this. It's going to be him taking and running off with what John Harbaugh wants and what his vision is for this organization. I think that's ultimately what it's going to be for now. I do think there's a few factors in this. I think John Mara's health is a big factor in this, and why they really didn't want to do a search right now. And also with the way it ended up working out is, their focus was getting Harbaugh and letting Harbaugh make these decisions. And for me, I will not, I will believe that Joe Shane is the long-term GM when I see it. And so far, it looks like he is the GM. I'm waiting for an extension. And if he gets one again, I will trust John Harbaugh. If he feels like he didn't work with Joe Shane, then go ahead. He's not my pick, but go ahead. Let's see if he can have his, Les Snead like revival. But ultimately it's his last year of his contract this year. He's up for an extension. Does he get that extension? We'll see. I think that will be telling.
Are you too hard on him though? I mean, because the Sheen fan base will say, hey, it's not his fault that Brian Daboll is a hothead and kind of an idiot. It's not his fault that players got injured under Daboll's watch. It's not his fault that Daboll couldn't find a quarterback that he actually got along with and kept finding ways to sort of ruin people because, well, he's a hothead. So again, they have talent. I mean, they have Brian Burns, they have Dexter Lawrence, they have Abdul Carter, they have the quarterback we think, hopefully, in Jackson Dart. So
Mhm.
is he a bad GM, or was it just, him and Dayball were like peanut butter and sardines? That was just a bad matchup.
Look, I mean, there's certainly things we can give credit to Joe Shane for. He's not hasn't done everything poorly. He's done some things well. I think it's unfair to put this on Brian Dable, as it feels all in Brian Dable, like it feels like the Giants are trying to do to some extent. Jackson Dart we mentioned. Jackson Dart would not be here if it was not for Brian Dable. You can hear Todd McShay, who had a lot of insight on the situation, was one of the first people to say that the Giants were really in on Jackson Dart's relationship with Brian Dable. Basically reported, he said, as he knows for 100%, he said 100%, I know that Brian Dable had to convince Joe Shane to get Jackson Dart. And, Joe Shane himself admitted that their quarterback process was put in by Brian Dable. Brian Dable's the one who put it in, and that's what they do. So, you can thank Brian Dable for Jackson Dart being here, and Jackson Dart ultimately is why Harbaugh is here, because that's what made this job so attractive. Brian Dable wasn't without faults himself, though. Certainly got fired for how he's handling the health of Jackson Dart, feeling like he was like kind of like stat padding at the end of the game for his own job security instead of putting Jackson Dart's health in at the forefront. But any issue, had trouble with this, the Wink situation and getting along with the staff. Did not have a disciplined team. You can go on and on. There was issues with Brian Dable, but also keep in mind, Joe Shane fought to keep Brian Dable here. There was talks about firing Brian Dable last year. Joe Shane fought to keep him. So, like, how am I going to sit here and say, Joe Shane deserves another chance because Brian Dable is so bad when he hired Brian Dable and then advocated year after year to keep him. Again, Joe Shane hasn't done everything bad. He's done good things, but he's also done a lot of bad things, or especially earlier in his career. I mean, you look at some of his, Deontay Banks, first round pick by him, looks completely unplayable. He traded up for Deontay Banks with guys like Joey Porter and Brian Branch on the board. He traded up one pick to get him for some reason. Traded up for Jalen Hyatt. It's been completely useless. There just hasn't had the best drafts. Evan Neal, I don't kill him for Evan Neal to be honest with you because he felt like more of a consensus pick, but also in the same sense, I'm consistent with that where I don't give him that much credit for taking guys like Malik Neighbors or Abdul Carter with those more chalk picks. So I'm like, look, I don't give you a ton of credit for that, but I'm also not going to kill you for missing on a guy that basically everybody would have drafted there. So he's had some late round picks, but he hasn't had the best success there. He paid Daniel Jones when basically the entire NFL was laughing at him while he did it. And it blew up in his face. So I think he's had some fireable offenses throughout his time here. And I think that most of the NFL expected him to be gone, and he's still here. And I think there's a variety of reasons to that. Maybe John Harbaugh changes everything, but I think the criticism of Joe Shane is very fair.
All right, this might be your new Giants offensive coordinator. Reports are it's Todd Monken is the sentimental odds-on favorite for John Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that? I mean, there's a lot because I can know like from Chiefs fans, they're saying the same thing. Get somebody from a shithead McVay tree, the tight pants nerd who comes up all these exotic plays and gets people open. Is that possible, or is this one of those things where it's like, all right, you get Harbaugh, he comes with his own people, and for better for worse, Todd Monken is his people.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Todd Monken would be a great hire. I love that Shanahan tree. Don't get me wrong, I love that Shanahan tree. I love to get somebody from that tree, but you know, if it's working, keep going with it. I mean, Todd Monken has been a great offensive coordinator for Baltimore. I mean, he's been among the league leaders in points per game, yards per game, EPA per play, success rate. All those things have been successful, and of course, Lamar plays a huge role in that, of course. But you know, Lamar had an MVP under him, probably should have had two. Um, you know, he's been very successful, Todd Monken, and I do think he will fit Jackson Dart well. I think is also important here. I mean, Todd Monken is a guy who came from, he started off as like an offensive coordinator in Oklahoma State. He was Brandon Whedon's offensive coordinator. He was, that air raid offense. And, he did that for a while and he evolved. He went to Georgia. There's still some versions of that, but it was more pro style, more heavy sets. And he took that to Baltimore and, some of the same, more pro style, more heavy sets, but still of those deep shots, explosive plays. And I think that will fit Jackson Dart well, a guy who came from an air raid offense in college. And, something where they brought a lot of principles to that year one and helped his success a lot. And I think having a guy who knows how to blend those two concepts between the NFL, making it easier on quarterback, getting the run game together, and also opening things up with an air raid offense, I think that's something that would fit Jackson Dart very well.
The offense that he ran in Baltimore, can they run that though with Jackson Dart? Because Lamar's a whole different beast. Lamar is somebody that if he gets an open field, good luck
Mhm.
catching him. He is 4.24 speed. He'll just run people by. That's not Jackson Dart. He's a good runner, but he's not going to just blow by people. So again, if for Todd Monken, like how do you shape an offense where you don't have, King Henry, as your running back, and you don't have Lamar Jackson at quarterback. So how does this offense look with sort of a you're not sure what you have a running back. Maybe it's Cam Scatterboo, maybe it's somebody else, and Jackson Dart. You're still trying to figure out what he is, but you know he's not Lamar.
Yeah. I mean, look, you got to tailor any offense to the personnel you have, and I think he's shown he can do that, and I think he will do that. But to your point, like no, he's not Lamar, and you can't do all the things that Lamar can do because Lamar's one of the most special quarterbacks in the NFL. He's elite. He's MVP. Like, but at the same time, Lamar Jackson hasn't been the runner he's been in the past. They've been trying to tone that down. Honestly, I think you might see some more running from Jackson Dart than you've been seeing from Lamar Jackson in recent years because he's really trying to, not rely on that as much. I know he's not the runner that Lamar is, but he's a damn good runner, and I do think that's going to be at this age. He's a younger guy. He can take those hits. He's got to be more selective about those, of course. But I think that's an important part of his game, and I think Todd Monken will help with that. No, you don't have Derrick Henry, but I'll also say that Baltimore offensive line has been horrendous, especially this last year. And the Giants offensive line, for once in my life, is actually like looking good. At least for a long time, the offensive line has been successful, and that is, I think, more important than the running back in these situations, in my opinion.
So how many players should we expect from Baltimore to come over? Because I'm guessing on your Christmas, draft wish list, free agency, you're like, ooh, Tyler Linbaum, love him to come over.
Yeah.
Hey, Isaiah
Mhm.
Likely, love to have you come over. Wait a minute here. DeAndre Hopkins, sure you could come over. Hey,
Yeah.
we might need you for, to teach the wide receivers how to catch the ball, stay in bounds, not be an a-hole. Yeah, you can come over. So should we expect to see the Baltimore offense be like Baltimore offense 2.0 or 2.5 with Jackson Dart running it?
I think you're going to see a little bit of the New York Ravens. I think there's going to be some aspect to that, and I think you see that with many coaches when they go to a new spot. Connor Hughes, one of our reporters, reported on that the Giants will probably be going heavy after Ravens players this offseason. We'll see who becomes. I love Tyler Linderbaum. I mean, to be able to get an elite young player at his position in free agency, I know center is not the premium position, but you know, those are the only elite players at this age who shake loose are the guys at the less premium positions. And I would absolutely get him, but watch out for the Chargers, who have a ton of money, need offensive line help a lot. Joe Ortiz, who helped draft him, is over in LA. They're gonna go hard after Tyler Linderbaum, if I had to guess, and they're gonna be a competitor for a lot of these guys. So, the brothers can go at it a little bit, but Giants need a tight end one. I think likely's likely. And I think you also see just a lot of depth pieces. Again, we have players, we don't have a team, and I think they'll try to build a team here.
Speaking of it, a defense coordinator, as of now, rumored is going to be Anthony Weaver. Excellent in Baltimore, sort of iffy in Miami, but Miami was just, you could argue, was a whole different ball of problems that even, Steve Spagnuolo couldn't fix. So, what are your thoughts? If he is DC hired, and they're still interviewing people, is he a good fit? Is he somebody you'd like to see, like maybe an upgrade over him? Like, what is your take on Anthony Weaver as possible DC?
Yeah, he's not my first pick, but ultimately I do trust John Harbaugh with these decisions, and I always expected him to stick in the Raven tree as far as defense goes. Offense, he goes out of that a little bit. He's brought in guys that necessarily hasn't worked with before, but defense seems like they always kind of stick to that Ravens tree, whether it's Rex Ryan, Wink Martindale, Mike McDonald, Zach Orr. I'm missing somebody as well, but regardless, like they always kind of stick to that Ravens tree, and it's a very attacking defense. It's a very they have a type there, and you're right. Anthony Weaver was their defense. Team had struggles, team had talent issues, but the defense wasn't great this last year. But what made me feel a bit better is you look a year before his first year in Miami. You look at that, fourth in yards per game, 10th in points per game, ninth in EPA per play, 12th in success rate, 11th in EPA per pass, 13th in EPA per rush. So that was a pretty good defense that year. So if they brought in Anthony Weaver, I would embrace it. I think there's a good chance that he could be successful here. Certainly better than Zach Orr. I wouldn't feel as good about that with some of his failures, but at the end of the day, I'll trust John Harbaugh. I'll tell you another name. I'm hearing we've heard through some of our Giants sources around here. Name that's been circulating is Jim Leonard. I know Ricky Scoops reported that. I've heard it from a few places, and keep an eye on him. Jim Leonard is a guy who played under John Harbaugh for a year. Then he went with Rex Ryan over to the Jets, played under him for few years. Took a lot of that Ravens and Rex Ryan philosophies to him. Created this chaotic defense at Wisconsin that was very, very good. Then when the Wisconsin cleaned house, brought in Luke Fickell, he went over to Denver. He's been working under Vance Joseph, who, again, one of the best defensive minds in football, another chaotic defense type guy. Has been the passing game coordinator there. He's assistant head coach there. Really hot candidate right now. I know Dallas Cowboys fans really want him, but I'm hearing if Vance Joseph doesn't get a job, at least, and he very well might. There's 10 openings right now. I think that the Giants have a good shot at him.
Whoever is, I guess the big question is going to be what does the Giants' defensive line look like? Which defensive coordinator do you feel has the best chance to sort of figure out, okay, how am I going to use Burns, Lawrence, Abdul Carter, and the rest of them without, one guy's, missing out because he's sort of, well, you're a linebacker because we can't move Burns from defensive end or we can't move Lawrence from defensive tackle. So which guy, when you look at the list of guys, do you go, this guy at least might have an idea how to use probably the Giants' best, position?
I do think that would be Jim Leonard. I think I love the philosophies he do. The more and more that I look into him, one thing that really caught my eye when I was like kind of looking at some of his defense from Wisconsin is the way he would get the nose guard isolated on the center. You can't do that with Dexter Lawrence, and they'll have to find ways around it. But if you leave, even with Dexter Lawrence, and he's hurt this year, he had a down year, all that stuff. You can even now you can't leave that man one on one with your center. He will kill him. Um, and you can bring people from all areas. You got the athleticism from a guy like Abdul Carter to be a weapon, to drop back into coverage if you need him, or to line up at off-ball linebacker and attack and blitz. You got people coming from all over, dropping, all those type of things. You don't know where it's coming from. I think I think that's what the Giants need. And I think we've seen our best football when we're playing downhill and we're aggressive. This is a guy who also learned from, I said Vance Joseph, and the guy that filled in for us with Charlie Bowen, who impressed a lot of Giants fans, impressed a lot of people in the organization. He might get a defensive coordinator job. I don't think here, but he might get one. I know a lot of people have been advocating to give him that job here. To me, my takeaway was not, wow, Charlie Bowen's great. And it's not that he wasn't great. He was impressive. Was more, it's like, wow, look how much better this defense looks in an aggressive downhill attacking defense. And I think that's what we ultimately need to bring in. And you get that from another Vance Joseph protege, another a Rex Ryan protege that works well with Harbaugh.
Who should be the quarterback coach? It's going to be a fascinating, I'd say, hire because you want somebody who can convince Jackson Dart, you can't just run around like you are right now. You can't play, as they say in New England, hard-out football, lead with your head.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, you're getting concussions. You also don't want to change him to something he's
Mm-hmm.
not. So if you're Harbaugh, like who are you hearing that he might bring in to be the sort of the soothsayer, QB whisperer to sort of unlock Jackson Dart, make him that quarterback where it's a sort of cross between the perfect world, let's say a Drake May and a Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I mean, I think keep an eye on T. Martin from the quarterback coach over at the Ravens. Obviously, that is that was easily the clear connection to make. I think anybody can make that connection, but he's spoken very highly of, and I do think that's somebody to keep an eye on. And I will just say to the Jackson Dart stuff, is a guy who was definitely way too reckless to start the season, and definitely has his issues still with that. But I do think it is gotten overblown to post concussion. I feel like it's a guy who is, he'll take his chances. He'll, and maybe sometimes you wouldn't want him to do it, but he's been, as a Giants fan to watch him every week, he's been much, much, much better about sliding. He usually does, and I think that I've been happy with the amount he's been doing, where he can still be himself and also, take the shots when he needs to. So they'll continue to work on it, but I don't think you need to drill it too far down with him. I think he gets the idea. I think he's getting better at it, and continue to coach it up, but let him be himself. So I mean, T. Martin's a guy to keep an eye on. Another name I heard, I don't know if it would be as QB coach or not, but former Wake Forest head coach Dave Clawson. That's a name that's gotten tossed around a couple times for whatever reason. And that's not a name that gets tossed around for no reason. He doesn't have any specific connection to Harbaugh. They did do like a coaching camp or academy together, but like they didn't work together. The fact that that name is getting thrown around, I think, is telling that people are hearing something. So I don't know if that's going to be like an offensive assistant situation, or maybe he could be a QB coach. We'll say.
All right, so let the speculation begin. The NFL Draft 2026 from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And this is now the first time now, ever since Harbaugh got, hired as coach, we can now honestly say we have no idea what they're going to do because it's not an offensive guy who, if this was Mike McDaniel, let's say Clint Kubiak, it's, ooh, they're going to get a weapon. They're going to get, Makai Lemon or maybe
Mhm.
Jordan Tyson or, hey, Carnell Tate, ha ha ha. If this was a defensive guy, let's say Brian Flores, we'd be going, ooh, yeah, we're going to try to get Ruben Bain. Or maybe if he falls, Avril Reese or your guy, I know, but you're secretly writing to Harbaugh going, hey, Caleb Downs, pick overall, can't miss. We have no idea what Harbaugh is going to do. So give me like off the top of your head, where could you see Harbaugh sort of like target for the draft? Like, okay, this is what we're going to go after. This is what we want for a Ravens football, or sorry, Giants Ravens football player. Like, what positions do you see him going? We need to draft this, often and early.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first way I would look at this is I feel like every draft you see a guy, you go, man, that's a Ravens pick. That's a Ravens guy. The Ravens are going to take him here. And I think you could use a little bit of that philosophy now with the Giants, and what guys fit that bill. And then, I think ultimately what that comes down to, a lot of it is they're a BPA team. They're always going BPA. There's certainly some positions that they value over others. I do think Caleb Downs, to me, would be the betting favorite in my mind. He fits that BPA thing. John Harbaugh has gone safety 3 times in the first round as the Ravens head coach. I mean, it's a position that he's prioritized. It's important for his defense, and Caleb Downs, certainly, if he's there, you could argue as BPA. I don't think anyone would argue that. Um, would BPA fall under like a Ruben Bain if he fell there? A David Bailey? I don't know. Ravens have not been high in taking. They don't take a lot of edge rushers first round. The only one they did is Adafe away now. They took him first round. It was the only edge rusher they took the first rounder under the Harbaugh era. So would they take a edge rusher? Maybe. I mean, again, I think they're a BPA team. I think that you look at a Bailey, you look at a Bain, you look at a Arvo Reese. Maybe there's a chance, especially if you're trading like a Kayvon Thibodeau. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. The other guy I'd look at is Francis Malagoa. I don't do. He just feels like a Ravens lineman to me. He's just a mauler. I mean, that it feels like a Harbaugh guy. I could see him in LA. I could see him in New York. Like those, it seems like a guy that they would fall in love with. And especially if you let Jermaine Illuminor walk. I don't know if they will, but I think that would put pressure on a make a pick like that. And he's shown up. He's shown up this entire playoff. So I think he's raised his stock. He's a Feldman freak. This is a guy who's going to do very well in the combine drills. And that'll only help his stock more. I think he's a very good player. I'm a big fan. He's the over at He's a Giant for our podcast, we do NFL draft reviews, and we review the so far we have five prospects at every position. He was my third highest rated prospect. I'm very high in Francis Mauigoa, and I would love that him as a pick there. As far as wide receiver goes, I don't. I think it's much less likely now that you're likely getting Todd Monken with John Harbaugh, because there's talks that we're going to try to re-sign Wan'Dale Robinson. There's talks that maybe if we not, we'll go get a like an Alex Pierce in free agency. And if neither of those happen, maybe it is wide receiver in the first round. But Todd Monken's a guy who runs 11-man personnel like 25% of the time. They have very heavy offenses. Tight end's going to be big in this offense, and I don't think it makes any sense to take a wide receiver top five if you pay Wan'Dale Robinson, if you have Malik Neighbors. I think you're going to bring in guys. You might draft one second round, you might draft a guy fourth round or third if you trade back or whatever. But I don't think wide receiver is going to be high up on their board, and I do think it used to be, but I think things are changing.
Could Jeremiah Love be on their board? Again, I get it's not a
Mm-hmm.
Ravens pick, but this is as Harbaugh kept saying, hey, I took this job for Jackson Dart. I took this job
Mm-hmm.
because I believe in Dart. You want to make this job, make the offense as easy as possible for Dart. So again, I get, the Giants' ways, the Ravens' ways, I should say, is defense,
Mm-hmm.
offensive line. Ooh, look at those guys. Caleb Downs. But for Harbaugh to be more evolved than what we was for the Ravens, does he have, could he change it up? Could he look and go, Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Love, I want to get weapons so that I don't have to rely on paying Wan'Dale Robinson up the nose, hoping that Malik Neighbors can stay healthy or that Cam Scattaboo is not going to be a hammerhead and get injured again. Like, what does he do for John Harbaugh? How much should we expect him to try to evolve from what he was and go, all right, I got to focus on making Jackson Dart as comfortable as possible?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a new situation. Things could change with John Harbaugh. I think everything you brought up is valid, and I think that there is a world I could see them taking a guy like Jeremiah Love, especially to prioritize Jackson Dart. I certainly wouldn't rule that out, but you know, I think you look at the past; it's the best indicator of what you're going to see them doing moving forward. And this is a guy who's never taken a running back round one. I mean, I can't even think off the top of my head if they've ever taken one round two, but they might have. But it's not a position they've prioritized in the draft. So it surprised me a little bit, but you never know. Like I said, they are a BPA team, just hasn't been running back in the past. So no, I wouldn't rule it out. I just don't expect it.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we love having him on the show, the debut, and we're definitely gonna get back on, later on when we find out more of a combine, stats, and more stats. I give you the co-host of He's a Giants podcast, Giants fan and a sleuth. I give you it is Monty of Monte Cristo. He's a Giants podcast. So Monty, before I let you go, where can fans check you out at? Where is the podcast, a YouTube, probably a Substack, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook? Where can fans hit you up at?
Sure. So you can find our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, where He's a Giant Pod on Twitter, on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter. I'm Montecri5to. You can find my co-host Sal Queens underscore guy. Hit us up. We're always talking ball. We'll do spaces on there. We'll chop it up. People in the chat on when we do our shows. Usually go live about 9:30 p.m. on Wednesdays. So hit us up. We do a lot of Giants stuff, do a lot of draft stuff. So even if you're not a Giants fan, we do a lot of draft content. Go back and check some of our previous stuff and keep an eye out for some stuff moving forward.
Monty, ladies and gentlemen, of He's a Giants podcast. Always on a pleasure to have you on the show. We come back. We got a lot more going on here, only on this last call. Last call of the alcohol, only on the last call podcast.com.